Well, welcome CS students. I want to show you just a little pseudocode that I put together to help me understand these algorithms. Eventually, when you take the AP exam, this sorting method, which we're going to start with selection sort, as well as the insertion sort and another type of sorting, which we'll do shortly, those three are going to be on the AP exam. So we really have to make sure you can produce those algorithms. I just wrote an example array here, and I provided the indices here. But what we're going to do for the selection sort, which basically is going to check this first number, it's going to assume this number is the smallest, and it's going to compare it to everything to the right. And it's going to keep checking all these numbers until it finds something that is smaller than the current index that we're at. If it does, it's going to take that smallest value and it's going to swap spots. Okay, until it runs out of spots to check. Okay, so now I'm going to set the outer loop to start at an index of 0. So the outer loop over here, I'll just kind of cross-reference the actual code. This is using an array list. We can also do this just with arrays, but I'll just reference this one for now because they're very similar. We're going to set the outer loop to start at 0. And we're going to iterate through the entire array, taking the length minus 1. That'll get us through the last index. And then we're going to increment the index by 1 each time. And it basically is going to track the current index that we're starting at. Okay, so now that we've established that, the first iteration through, the value at whatever index is going to be the smallest value. So right now, we're going to assume the minimum index is 0. And we're going to assume the minimum value is 5. Okay. We are then going to check J. We're going to establish a J as a variable or some other variable. It doesn't have to be J as the index that we're going to check. Okay, so now we're going to create an inner loop using J. If you think about that, if I'm starting at 1, I don't need to check, or if I'm starting at 0, I don't need to check index 0. I need to check one more than that. So J is going to start at 1 more than I. So over here, J is set equal to 1 more than I. So it's always going to check the one to the right of that. And we're going to iterate through the entire array. Okay. In that process, we are checking if the current value, that the value at J is less than the minimum index value. All right. And so if we look at what we've done here, as we set J equal to, as we check this value, we're basically saying, is this smaller than that? And it is. So I'm going to make my minimum index 1, and my minimum value is 3. All right. And that's what we've done right here in the code. All right, but now we're going to loop through that again. So now we're going to set J to 1 more value later. So now we're over here. Is 2 less than 3? Yes, it is. So now I'm going to make my new index 2, and the value at index 2 is 2. So that becomes my minimum value. All right, and then it checks to the one to the right. Is 1 less than 2? You bet it is. So I make my new minimum index 3, and the minimum value becomes 1. All right, now that we've gone all the way through here, it now knows the minimum value of everything to the right of this index 0. It knows the minimum value occurs at index of 3. So we have now finalized our minimum index set to the last value that we checked. And that was at 3 in this case. It won't always be the last one. All right, so now that we've done that, now we're going to take this low value and we're gonna move it over here. But we have to temporarily store this. So we're going to take this value at the index we're checking, move it to the temp. Okay, and then we're going to take this value and move it to the beginning. So this now becomes a 1. And then we're going to take our temporary value and fill it in right here. So this now becomes the 5. And so this was kind of the way I told myself how to do that. create a temporary holding value for whatever index was at, in this case 0, normally at index I. You're going to store that value at the minimum index location. So since the minimum index location was 3, I stored 5 at that spot. And then I put our, I said that backwards, I'm sorry. Our current value was at index 0. So I took whatever was our minimum index, which was 3, and I took that value and moved it to the beginning. Okay, that's that second line here. And then lastly, we're going to put the temporary value where the minimum index was. So I'm going to put the temporary value at index 3, which is what I've done right there. Okay, and then it will return the array after it iterates through all of these next few times. So then the next outer loop will get set to an index of 1, and then we're going to check all the items to the right of that value. All right. Hopefully that helps. It takes some time to logic through this stuff. It takes a little while to absorb, and I'll give you another video on insertion sort here in a moment.